Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Mind your business. Only on Money FM 89.3.
Yes, it is that time for Mind Your Business with me, Audrey Seek, and Ahmad Akhtar. Now, Ahmad, remember the days when it was pretty easy to spot a scam?
I remember those days.
Yeah, because emails, were riddled with typos, like strange grammar, WhatsApp messages from a faraway place. Actually, recently I've been getting many of these messages that I apparently have millions of dollars parked away somewhere in Ghana. And you'd maybe get a message from a prince offering you a fortune. Easy enough to ignore, right? But now scams have become a lot harder to spot.
Yeah, we've all heard of that friend who's received a perfectly crafted email that sounds just like their boss, or a colleague who's gotten a phone call from someone who knows their name, their role, even the software they use, or how much money they've stored away in Ghana, for instance.
Exactly.
And when the fraud is finally uncovered, the question isn't just how, but who or what was behind it.
Yeah, we're now entering a whole new era of cybercrime, one where AI and human deception are kind of teaming up. And the result, scams are much harder to detect and far more dangerous. So how do we protect ourselves in this new digital landscape? And what can individuals and businesses do when the line between real and fake is increasingly blurred?
All right. Well, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Paul Wilcox on the show. He is the Vice President for Asia Pacific and Japan at Infoblox. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Ahmad. Great to be here.
Great to have you on. First things first, what exactly is a hybrid scam and how different are they from traditional phishing or cybercrime attacks?
Yeah, good question. It certainly evolved quite quickly over the past year. A hybrid scam, as the name implies, is really just a combination of AI-powered automation with old-school human social engineering tactics. So what they do is they create a highly personalized and scalable attack, and as you said, traditional phishing was really easy to pick up because the grammar or the layout or typos gave you a sign that something was amiss. Whereas now, using AI, they're forging messages and content that is far more sophisticated and far more personalized, and certainly almost impossible to pick up.
Yeah, so you talked about these scams now being highly personalized and sophisticated. Are there any examples you could share of these scam tactics or tech innovation being used by cyber criminals that even surprise, really seasoned professionals like yourself?
The utilization of AI has certainly surprised us quite a lot, not just in the fact that people are leveraging it. That seems pretty obvious. But it's almost as much about the kinds of people that are now using that technology, whereas in the past it would have been highly effective, highly organised criminal organisations. It's now becoming very easy for unskilled individuals to leverage this technology and create very personalised spear phishing campaigns against people. So where that's become really challenging is that it's not just larger organisations, it's also individuals that are being hit. The good news is that from a technology point of view, all of these things leverage the domain name system, or DNS. So for those listeners that don't understand what that is, that's effectively the phone book of the internet. So when you type something in on your computer, the DNS will tell that computer where to go to get that information. So by knowing that all of those attacks leverage that vector, then we can provide a little bit more protection in that space.
Yeah, Paul, Infoblox provides security solutions to a portfolio of 13,000 companies, apparently, according to your website, including 75% of Fortune 500 companies. Who are some of these companies and how have you helped them out?
They don't like us to use their name, unfortunately, Ahmad, but certainly it's based on a lot of industries. We help government, we help financial services, health organisations. I think with the proliferation of these kinds of attack technologies, no industry is immune to this today. So there's virtually no company that isn't subject to this kind of attack, and you either have been attacked or will be at some stage in the future.
Whoa, yeah. So, Paul, for those listening today, especially SMEs or organizations without large IT teams, what practical steps can they possibly take now to reduce their risk?
Yeah, good question, Audrey, and I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that the smaller organisations are facing is what do I do and how can I spend my money and resources on technology where I don't blow out my entire IT infrastructure budget just on security. Probably the easiest way to go about it, and it's something that falls into our wheelhouse here at Infoblox, is to start very early in the attack cycle. So start at that very beginning. I mentioned before that DNS is the phone book of the internet, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a computer, whether you're talking about your phone or an IP camera or an MRI machine in a hospital. All of these devices use DNS. So by securing that and using that as a security methodology or security control, organisations are able to get a very heavy lift without too much sweat or too much effort and without too much cost, as importantly. So the earlier in the attack that we can get hold of these threats, then the easier it is for smaller organisations to stop these breaches from taking place.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Paul. I'm just curious, we talk a lot about individual or group cybercrime, which is typically driven by personal gain or other non-state motivations. Well, what about the rise potentially of government-backed cybercrime, which is where governments potentially could use cyber tools for malicious purposes like espionage or sabotage or political influence, especially given the terse geopolitical situation now that the world is in? Do you see that as a concern?
It's obviously a concern. I think state-based attacks are probably increasing, and again, it gets down to what I mentioned before, not just on an individual level, but a lot of state-based attacks are now taking place with less skilled operators. So it's brought that capability into the hands of less evolved state-based organisations, and I think the current environment is such that there's certainly a lot of effort being put in by lesser-known actors that we wouldn't have seen in the past.
So as these threats continue to evolve, Paul, what role do you see AI-based threat detection playing in helping these organizations stay ahead?
Really good question, because I think it's important for everybody to understand that whilst the attackers are using AI, we've got the opportunity to leverage that technology just as much. In terms of what we're doing as an organisation, we are fortunate enough, and I've mentioned before, that 75% of the Fortune 500 are our customers, and it's about 92% of the Fortune 100. So we're fortunate enough to see a vast portion of internet traffic, and because of that, we get to see patterns and things that take place. It is very difficult for a human to analyse that volume of knowledge and that volume of data. So using AI and using machine learning and those kinds of big data technologies allows us to see patterns and allows us to see things well before the attack even takes place. In most cases, a couple of months before an attack takes place, we're able to predict what's going to happen and thereby secure organisations and individuals against that.
Yeah, Paul, speaking of attack prevention, of the 13,000 companies under your wing, I'm not sure how many are from the retail, logistics or F&B space, for instance, but those industries contain companies that aren't particularly tech-heavy. How should they start thinking about cybersecurity hygiene? Are they more at risk than, let's say, other established companies that have better network infrastructures?
Yeah, good view, because we're certainly seeing that financial services and government and healthcare are obviously quite robust in their security posture now. What we're seeing is that cyber criminals are starting to bleed into those lesser industries or lesser protected industries and get a lot more pay out of their efforts. So it's really important in that situation to start to look at some of the foundational security controls to make sure that you're not spending money on all of this stuff that may not be terribly effective, or more importantly, tells you about the problem after the attack's taken place. It's really important to get ahead of it and stop the attack at the earliest instance.
All right, Paul. Well, you've led teams and operations across very different markets in Asia Pacific. We want to know what lessons you've picked up along the way, when it comes to balancing digital innovation with security, because it's a hard balance to strike nowadays.
It is. And certainly, our organisation on the growth curve that it's been on, especially in the Asia Pacific region, has been extraordinary. And to your question, Audrey, what I've personally learned is that in such a diverse market, we need to be flexible, we need to be adaptable. But I'm fortunate in that whilst there are those nuances around the region, what we're talking about sort of transcends those different cultures and different levels of capability. So again, the earlier we get to a problem, the better it is, and therefore we're in a great spot for that. Additionally, I think as a personal lesson, one of the things that's been really driven home in my 30-odd years about. And that really is super important, because whilst we're talking about protecting companies and protecting data, at the end of the day, it's the impact of that breach that matters. So it's the impact of the people, whether that be the person that's responsible for protecting an organisation, whether that be shareholders, whether that be owners of companies, or whether that be individual employees whose job security is threatened by these breaches. Then it is a people business, first and foremost. And I think that's a really important part to remember as you're scaling a business across this region.
Yeah, it is a people business. And as we've heard, hybrid scams are no longer a fringe issue, fast becoming the norm. And with AI raising the stakes, cybersecurity isn't just a technical concern. It's central to how we build trust in this digital economy. Paul, thank you so much for joining us this morning on The Breakfast Show. We loved having you on.
Thanks, Audrey. Thanks, Ahmad. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your time as well. Paul Wilcox is the Vice President for Asia Pacific and Japan at Infoblox. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.